Drop Dead Fred, is it just Rik Mayall messing about, or is it indeed one of the best nostalgic films of the 90s? Hey everyone, I'm Jim and welcome back to My Movie Obsession, a place for film obsessors. If you constantly find yourself looking for the next movie to obsess over, you're probably in the right place. It's time to take an in-depth look at one of my favourite childhood movies growing up, a movie that has acquired a great cult following over the years, sentimental, slapstick, fantasy, it has it all, comedy classic, Drop Dead Fred from 1991. The script for Drop Dead Fred initially received interest from Disney, who wanted Goldie Hawn to take the lead role of a young woman whose imaginary friend comes back to visit her in her adult life. However, Disney were not keen on the choice for Drop Dead Fred, UK comedian Rik Mayall, so they pulled out. The movie was also offered to Tim Burton, but even he declined to direct. When even Tim Burton thinks the movie's too weird to direct, you know you're onto something. However, Rik Mayall wasn't the first choice for Fred. Robin Williams was offered the part, but he turned it down to instead star in Hook. Now, I love Hook, it's one of my favourite childhood films, but part of me wants to see what Robin Williams would have done as Drop Dead Fred. I mean, if there was one person who could potentially outdo Rik Mayall in being over the top, it was good old Robin. When Rik Mayall got the part, he worked closely with writers Anthony Fingleton and Carlos Davis, and came up with several key moments in the movie, as well as a lot of Fred's lines, mannerisms and personality, and a lot of them ended up being close to Rik's trademark anarchic comedic style.
That's the base! Yeah! What happened to you? Look at you! You're all older! You're even uglier! Ugh.
Kerry Green, Molly Ringwald, Julia Roberts, Winona Ryder and Leah Thompson were all considered for the role of Elizabeth before it went to Phoebe Cates of Gremlins and Fast Times at Ridgemont High fame. Dutch director Ate De Jong was eventually signed on to direct, with production commencing in Minneapolis in 1990. Star Wars legend Carrie Fisher was cast as Elizabeth's best friend Janie, and much like Rik with Drop Dead Fred, Fisher was allowed lots of space to improvise with her character of Lizzie's long-suffering best friend. Fisher even rewrote a lot of her dialogue, truly taking charge of this role. Carrie Fisher, always a strong, passionate lady who didn't take no for an answer. She was going to put in a great, memorable performance, and she would change the script if she needed to. She was badass. I salute you, Carrie. You were a great lady, and you were very missed. Rest in peace. Polygram and Working Title Films did not have US distribution divisions at the time. They often relied on other distributors to handle the US distribution for their movies. They were both struggling to find a US distributor to sell the film to. They showed the final cut of Drop Dead Fred to various distributors, including Orion Pictures, Vestron Pictures, TriStar Pictures, and 20th Century Fox, and all of them called it the most depressing children's movie on drugs. They obviously haven't seen Return to Oz. They even brought it to the Geffen Film Company, but even they turned it down because they felt the movie was a rip-off of Beetlejuice, which Geffen had distributed 3 years earlier. The film was eventually shown to New Line Cinema, with New Line CEO Robert Shaye and executive Michael DeLuca bashing and hating the movie, with Shaye allegedly calling it horseshit. Fellow executive Sarah Risher was the only one who liked the film. She felt that the character of Drop Dead Fred was a comedic reversal of Freddy Krueger in their A Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. New Line at the time was also trying to find another Freddy Krueger character, as they were ending the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise with Freddy's Dead the same year. For the next few days, Risher kept trying to convince Robert Shaye to buy the rights to the movie, and Shaye eventually finally agreed, but as we know, Drop Dead Fred never became a franchise or ended up having a sequel. That would be mental. Drop Dead Fred the franchise. Imagine it. Drop Dead Fred Part 2, Fred's Revenge, Drop Dead Fred 3, The Pooh Warriors, Drop Dead Fred 4, The Pooh Child. Do I have to go on?
Couldn't have done better myself.
Drop Dead Fred was produced on a budget of just under $6.8 million and was released theatrically in North America on May 24, 1991, grossing $3,625,648 on its opening weekend and $13,878,334 over its entire theatrical run. It was also critically panned, and legendary critic Gene Siskel placed it as the worst film of 1991. His equally legendary colleague Roger Ebert was not keen on the movie either, to put it mildly.
What?
Sadly, on the 9th of June 2014, Rik Mayall died at the age of 56 from a heart attack. The UK in particular was devastated, and for me personally, I miss you so much, Rik. Your comedy got me through some really, really dark times growing up, and your comedy has always helped me laugh at life, helped me smile, and in the face of adversity, just smile and laugh and joke about silly things. And your comedy was some of the most genius stuff I've ever seen. So rest in peace, Rik Mayall. You're an absolute legend.
Drop Dead Fred tells the story of Lizzie, played by Phoebe Cates, a young woman whose life falls to pieces, all in the space of one lunch hour. She loses her husband, her car, and her job, and is forced to go back and live with her domineering mother, Polly, played by Marsha Mason. While she's there, she's reunited with her childhood imaginary friend, Drop Dead Fred, played by Rik Mayall, who brings back the chaos and mayhem of her childhood with often embarrassing results. The performances are great and are so strong that you are left sitting there thinking, if this was someone else, or if this actress didn't do her job very well, this script would be exposed as being slightly weak. Phoebe Cates and Rik Mayall elevate a flawed script, and their performances are two of the main successes of the film. Phoebe Cates instantly gets our sympathy with her performance as a good-hearted young woman who has been dominated and let down her entire life. It's a very pure and sweet performance, and never comes across as forced or artificial. This woman is so kind and so earnest that when we see her chasing this revolting husband who couldn't care less if she existed, we are literally sat there wishing and hoping that Lizzie realises she is worth so much more than to just base her life around other people's views of her. The little girl who plays Lizzie as a child in flashbacks, Ashley Peldon, is absolutely adorable. She brings the film a real sense of innocence, and just like Phoebe Cates, her chemistry with Rik Mayall is fantastic. He was a very special and exciting British comedian that kind of defined an era. He starred in several iconic British sitcoms, including The Young Ones and Bottom, and utilised very anarchic humour such as nose picking and saying the word poo. Childish, yes, but he was indeed a very childlike comedian, and even did children's TV shows, such as Grim Tales, in which he read children's stories in his own unique style. This is a show I watched when I was very, very young, and I was fascinated. I'd never seen anything like Rik Mayall before. I mean, look at this. Imagine being a kid and seeing this maniac read you stories. Look at this madman.
Once upon a time, there was a mummy goat who had 7 really naughty children, her kids. Now, children, she said, I'm going to Sainsbury's, right? So don't let any strangers in, especially not the wolf, because he'll eat you up. Right, bye-bye, and don't break the furniture. And the kids said, which meant, don't worry, mother, we'll watch out.
If you know about Rik Mayall and grew up watching him, this performance makes sense. If you're completely new to him, like a lot of the American audience were, this performance is going to be possibly very grating, as a lot of people found it. Rik's gimmick was, he was basically a human mood ring. He was electric, exciting, he was still a child, he still had energy and lacked inhibitions. If you had seen Rik blossom on TV, then it's a joy to watch him as Fred, and one of the reasons is that no other comedian on earth would have provided a performance even remotely similar to this. It's entirely unique.
Fred's really larger than life, you see. I don't think I'm a kind of Meryl Streep type actor, you know, who can make people weep just by raising an eyebrow that much, you know. Me, I brat about. But that's why it's good for me. That's why I seized on the ideas, because Fred's imaginary, so he can just be anything, and he can be over the top and loud and stupid and childish. And that means that I can be me and hopefully not make a mistake.
Drop Dead Fred represents Lizzie's inhibitions, her shedding of her fears, and in some ways her desire to just be out of control for a while, to escape a life where she has always been controlled. He isn't simply an annoying character who gets Lizzie into trouble for no reason. He's a character who represents the inner child, the desire to play, the longing for fun and mischief. He is the living embodiment of being young. Now, there's been a lot of debate as to whether this is a movie about mental illness and that Lizzie is simply insane and does everything that Fred does herself. The other theory is that imaginary friends exist for the person they are assigned to, and they are real in the fact that they do in fact exist, but they are created by the child's loneliness or the child's yearning for escapism. I like this idea more than Lizzie being insane. If she is in fact insane and Fred isn't real whatsoever, then all the magic is gone from the film. All the points the film tries to hit about childhood, nostalgia, innocence, finding your place in the world, all of that is kind of mute if this is a film about an insane woman. If Lizzie is crazy, then everything is sort of meaningless. It's a film about play, mischief, individualism and coming of age. And none of that really fits in for me if Lizzie is ultimately insane. If she is, everything is kind of pointless and loses its spark.
It's like people just want to take the playful edge out of this film and just make it serious and morbid. It can't be a playful film about an imaginary friend. No, it has to be, she's mental, she's depressed, her life's shit, and she's the only one to blame. It's just morbid. And to those people, I have a message from Rik Mayall himself. Take it away, Rik.
God, you're weird, aren't you? I mean, you're really weird.
Fred's friendship with Lizzie really works. The flashback scenes are especially important because we see while Fred was allowing Lizzie to act out which would land her in trouble, he was also truly her best friend and cared deeply about her. While Rik Mayall is great in the crazy over-the-top scenes, when he needs to, he can be very sentimental, and that's one of the things I loved about the actor.
Maybe Mommy's right. I never do anything right.
So what? What are you saying that for? You're great. She's not. She's always fighting with your dad. She's always calling you horrible things. Look, you've got to be what you want to be. And don't you ever be like her. Promise?
Promise.
Okay. Ow!
Gotcha, Fred. Hey.
Fred was the only one who was there for Lizzie, who helped her unleash what was inside of her and helped her be happy despite being dominated by her mother. Now this brings me to one of the minor flaws with the movie. Polly is very angry whenever Lizzie and Fred cause some trouble or make a mess. But wouldn't you be? Surely any parent would punish their child for this. However, we do see elsewhere, even without Fred, Polly is a very controlling, unkind mother, so that kind of excuses the film a bit and suggests even without Fred she would be the same. There's even a moment where Lizzie tells Fred that when Fred was gone from her life, her mother used him being gone to hurt her all the way through to her being an adult. Polly may have been correct to be, I guess, a bit angry when Lizzie would make a mess. So would any parent, but she went about dealing with it entirely the wrong way. It's only a minor flaw, because if you think about it, a good parent wouldn't psychologically control their child and tell them they are worthless for their entire lives even without Fred being around. When Lizzie moves back home, she can barely speak when she's around her mother. I mean, Polly has took it way too far from simply being justifiably angry to a bit of mess. She's destroyed all her daughter's self-confidence and belief for her entire life. I suppose I proposed that minor flaw and have somewhat defeated it myself. However, I still regard it as a minor flaw because I admit the film could have done a little bit better in the way that it worked in Fred's mischief, but there should have been a few moments where Fred's troublemaking was slightly stripped back a little, simply so Polly's reactions were a little less justified. As I say though, this film definitely makes sure we know that this woman is a complete arse.
The death breath! She killed me with the death breath! Begone, evil one!
Humour in the movie is very childish, but it has an adult edge to it also, which is kinda how Rik Mayall's humour always was. The film appears to have been written for no one else other than Rik Mayall. The problem with this that I mentioned earlier is it would probably be very jarring if this was your first ever expose to Mayall.
Look, it's British, okay? We still laugh at words like snot, bottom and poo. God, no wonder we're leaving the EU.
I'm very immature, however, and to see Rik Mayall running around a living room getting dog poo everywhere and singing about it still makes me laugh.
I got some dog poo right here. All alongside, all up there, lovely up smelly dog poo.
That's the thing with this film, I think people took it a little too seriously, and so Rik's humour did not connect with their inner child. For me and a lot of people it works. If you know Rik Mayall, you know Fred isn't obnoxious, he is instead the child you have never left behind. What about the other performances? Well, the late Carrie Fisher is in this, as Lizzie's best friend, the non-imaginary one, Janie. She's a lot of fun, her performance goes a little unnoticed when people talk about the good stuff in this movie. Carrie offers a very entertaining and charismatic performance, once again proving she was a truly underrated actress, who deserved to be known and respected as more than just Princess Leia. As Charles, Tim Matheson is suitably repulsive. This guy delivers the obnoxious and narcissistic arsehole flawlessly. You really do hate this character. And Tim Matheson makes you believe wholeheartedly that this guy truly doesn't care about anyone else but himself. I mentioned Martha Mason as Polly, and she is perfect as Lizzie's cold and unloving mother. This is quite a tragic mother and daughter relationship to watch, but we cannot blame just Fred for this. It really is Polly's fault, because even without Fred, she longs to psychologically fuck up her child. Drop Dead Fred ultimately sends a positive message that you don't need to be like everyone else. You don't need to hang on to people in order to be happy. Lizzie has spent her whole life being screwed over by people, and her lack of self-worth has allowed people like Charles to walk all over her and dictate her life. The last half hour of this film really touched me when I saw it as a kid. It makes up for a lot of the flaws. It's some of the most earnest cinema I saw growing up, and I really mean that. I also say that because watching it today is still very powerful, as Lizzie realises that Charles is once again cheating on her, and she reveals to Fred, who she has been trying to get rid of because of Charles, that she is scared to be alone. Phoebe Cates' delivery is stunning, and this moment is pretty much the culmination of all the stuff she has ever gone through in her life coming out in one statement. Fred takes her into her imagination and she learns to let go of her controlling past, and becomes confident, realising that all her life she has tried to make other people happy, and it's time to love herself for once. When Fred and Lizzie say goodbye, it's adorable, and this entire scene just rings loud and clear with melancholy and genuine emotion, all stemming from childhood experiences and a lifetime of confusion finally getting closure. I love it, it really does make me emotional, as I know myself and others watching this film have suffered with self-confidence issues in their lives. So everyone out there, stop caring about what other people think, stop relying on other people, and most of all, don't be afraid. It seems director Ate De Jong wanted to do more visually with this film than he was able to. It does feel like a low budget version of Beetlejuice, which it was. I mean, Beetlejuice cost 15 million and this cost 6.
You bunch of losers!
It seems like they wanted to take the audience into a more exciting and visually stimulating place, but they just didn't have the resources to do it. The combination where Lizzie enters her own imagination looks okay, but all we really get to see is Lizzie create a tree with her mind. Wow. Although this scene is powerful on an emotional level, I feel like the director ideally wanted more crazy stuff to happen on screen than just a tree grow.
So we got to come out with something great for the culmination. I mean, Beetlejuice had the seance, it had Beetlejuice running around trying to bloody marry Winona Ryder, it had the models coming to life. What have you got planned for the Drop Dead Fred ending? Come on, lay it on me, director. Well, a tree's gonna grow.
Right.
Another scene I'd like to talk about very quickly is the moment where Fred encounters all of his imaginary friends. It's great, what an awesome idea. This is another reason why I hope that Fred is real. Again, if this was all insanity, there's nothing special or fun about it. I love this scene, but again, it could have been a lot more, and perhaps led to something bigger and better. Perhaps they could have done a sequel to Drop Dead Fred and elaborated on the world the imaginary friends live. It felt like there was a lot of potential after this scene, and it left me wanting more. One element of the film that definitely does not suffer is the score by Randy Edelman. It's fantastic. The opening credits scene completely embodies everything about Drop Dead Fred. Mischief, innocence, the anarchic style of Rik's humour. It's one of the greatest opening credits scenes ever in my view, because it completely throws you off guard and prepares you for a childlike world with a little bit of an edge. I absolutely adore the music. It fills me with happiness every time I hear it. It reminds me so much of being young, carefree and happy. There's something in Drop Dead Fred for everyone, and a lot of people viewed that as a problem. For example, they were thrown off by Fred's anarchic humour one minute, and then the next a sweet childhood scene. People saw the film as all over the place, but for me it makes it unique, it makes it stand out from other films that play it safe, and it makes it quite ambitious. Even if you hate Drop Dead Fred, you have to admit there is no film like it, and probably never will be again. I do believe the script could have been tighter, with certain moments needing to be written better to make Fred more likeable, or to perhaps make things make sense a bit more. But for the mixing of the adult and childhood world, that wasn't an issue for me. I enjoyed it because it gave the film a different dimension than others, and when I was a child, I felt like it was a film that respected me. It didn't talk down to me, and it wasn't like all the other goody two-shoes children's films. Drop Dead Fred is one of my favourite childhood movies. I did acknowledge the flaws and I tried to be fair and point them out when I saw them. I've got to be honest, it's not a brilliantly written film, but it has brilliantly written moments, great ideas and such a strong feeling of melancholy and nostalgia. The script needed to be tighter, but it got the point across in a big way. I feel like Drop Dead Fred is a love it or hate it film. Either it works for you or it doesn't. One thing I'd like to say to close things out is that when Drop Dead Fred does work for you, it becomes very special to you. There are so many fans of this movie, and it is indeed a cult film. If you're a fan of Drop Dead Fred, you can't really put into words the emotional bond you have with the film, but it's one that lasts forever.
I'm not afraid of the mega beast.
I'm not either. When she comes in here, we'll make her eat up all this mud.
Yeah, and then we'll cut her head off.
With scissors.
Yeah, and then we'll make her eat it.
Make her eat her own head.
Yeah.
With what?
Drop Dead Fred is another beloved cult movie that was due to receive the remake treatment. The planned remake was intended to star UK comic Russell Brand as Fred, and was set to be a more ambitious affair visually. However, after Brand's box office failure with 2011's Arthur, the project was scrapped. You know, I'm in two minds about the idea of this remake. One, I think Russell Brand is probably the best choice to ever play Fred in a remake, and there are plenty of things to improve on in Drop Dead Fred, so the remake could have at least filled in the cracks that the original film had in places. On the other hand, it's a childhood film I have such a soft spot for. I don't really want to see it touched. Drop Dead Fred is a moment in time movie, and to many people it's special. So let's just leave it there. It's a great cult movie, and it has its place in many people's hearts. There you have it, Drop Dead Fred, one of my favourite childhood movies, a movie that is very near and dear to my heart. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the film. Do you love it? Are you one of the fans? And if you're one of the critics, let me know too, because this is definitely not a flawless movie. So if you're new here, this channel focuses primarily on retro movies from the 80s and 90s, as well as superhero movies. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, and you're a film obsessive who loves to talk film all day every day, please consider subscribing. So thanks for watching everyone, keep on snot flicking, and I will see you guys next time.